welcome to the channel. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Now today's video is going to be a bit of a mix between an unboxing and a quick first impressions, but we're also going to do a quick comparison as well. The watch we have today is a Heimdallr, and this is their interpretation of the Seiko Turtle 6309 Homage. Now I did point this watch out on the August AliExpress sales. Now truth be told, this watch did kind of slip under my radar. I've been waiting from Heimdallr for a Turtle Homage for quite a long time. Saw this on the AliExpress page. Number one, obviously it wasn't from Heimdallr, it was from a seller on AliExpress, an agent. What stuck out to me was the price. First of all, it was up for £100. I thought, that's an incredible price now for a turtle. So because I mentioned it in my AliExpress sales video, I went ahead and ordered one. So let's have a first quick impressions of this watch. You can see they've gone with that classic 6105 style dial, and they've used the same handset. If you pay attention to the dial, it's got quite a nice finish, almost like a satin finish. The description reads enamel-like. Of course, it's not enamel, but I'd say it's been lacquered quite heavily, so it gives a really nice satin sheen to it as well. So I'd say at first looks, first impressions, it does seem pretty nice, pretty well built, but that's not different for Heimdallr. You know, that's what we usually expect. And on the wrist check, I'm wearing the bronze version. So the case back, awesome polishing, no sharp edges. Overall looks pretty great, and they send it on this thick dive strap that they have with a lot of their watches. Let's turn the bezel. Bezel is slightly stiff to turn, but I think it needs a bit of wearing in. So first impressions, positive. A lot of Heimdallr watches, as you guys know, they are to a very good standard, especially with the release of the Heimdallr Monster Homage, which I think by far is one of their best models to date. So that being said, what we're going to do, we're going to bring in the San Martin 6309/SRP 777. They list it as a SRP, but between the two, honestly, I think there is only, between a 6309 and SRP model, I think there's only about a mil or two tops difference in dimensions. So we've got both watches here in front of us. So we'll do a comparison, and I'll point out the similarities, and we'll also cover where they really differ. And at the end, an overall value for money versus value added improvements or upgrades in line with the differences within each other. Before I go any further, it's time for that usual YouTuber script. So remember to hit the subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Remember to hit the notifications bell so you're up to date with all of the latest reviews. Check the links in the description, that's quite important there, as that contains any affiliated AliExpress links to the watches that are being shown or reviewed within the videos. The first things I want to discuss is dimensions, and then we'll go on to the specifications and what specifications they actually share. So diameter between both watches is exactly the same, 45 millimeters. They were both measured by the same calipers, and so even if my calipers are out by point whatever, between them exactly the same. Thickness on both, the Heimdallr to the left 13.2 and the San Martin to the right 14.1. The difference there is due to San Martin using a double dome sapphire crystal and the Heimdallr using a flat sapphire crystal. Lug to lug on both is exactly 47.1 millimeters, and the lug width is 22 millimeters for both. Now, the weight of both watches, the Heimdallr comes in at 133 grams and the San Martin comes in at 120, and both were weighed on their respective straps that you see here. Now let's cover the specifications. Both watches are constructed using a 316L stainless steel, and that is including the bezel and also the case back. Both cases have drill lugs and of course 316L screw down crowns. Both use ceramic bezel inserts, sapphire glass, and they both come with rubber straps, and of course they both use the very trusty and very reliable NH35 movement from Seiko Epson, which, if you don't know, is a 24 joule movement with hack and wind capability, and it runs at 21,600 vibrations per hour, giving you a sweep of 6 ticks a second. So dimensionally and specification wise, both are literally exactly the same. They've got the same materials and they've got more or less the same dimensions. Of course, the thickness where they differ, as I mentioned, was down to the sapphire glass. So apart from the obvious visual differences that you see right in front of you, where do they actually differ? So let's go and explore that, and let's start off with the dial on both watches. So both dials are actually very similar. So number one, both indices on both dials are more or less exactly the same. You've got a slight variation between the applied hour markers. Both are applied with a silver frame around each hour marker, and you've got the dual indice at the 12 o'clock. The coating on the dial is also exactly the same, and I like how they both have this in common. So you've got this enamel like satin finish to both dials. Now where they differ obviously is within the logos, but both are applied at the 12 o'clock, and at 6 o'clock you can see both have printed text, although there's a variation in what they say. But you've got the water resistance highlighted in red on both. The Heimdallr saying 300 meters and the San Martin saying 200. Now the other visual difference here is the date window. The date frame has got curved edges on the San Martin and square edges on the Heimdallr. There's also a slight difference within both chapter rings, whereas the Heimdallr one, the chapter ring, the markers are slightly thinner than the one on the San Martin. Now the last main visual difference is the handsets used. The finishing, I gotta say, or the way they've been cut, is quite similar, where you've got polished edges and you've got brush centers, but because the hands on the San Martin are a lot larger, you can see more brushing on the surface area. I also do like that on the San Martin you've got that second hand with the lollipop end, and how on the top you cannot see the hole for the pinion. Both dials also have a difference in the lume that's been used. On the left, the Heimdallr uses C3 superluminova on the pip at the 12 o'clock on the bezel, and also the dial and handset. Now on the right hand side you've got the San Martin, which uses BGW9 on that pip at 12 on the bezel and also across the whole dial. Now you can see before and after a UV lamp has been used, both are equally bright, but the C3 does outlast the BGW9. Both watches also use different types of sapphire crystal. The Heimdallr of course uses a flat sapphire crystal with AR coating, which gives it a slight more glare to the surface, whereas the San Martin uses a double dome AR coated sapphire crystal. Now the double dome crystal is done from the top and underneath the crystal, which gives it less distortion, and as you can see, the legibility on the dial and the glare is a lot less compared with the Heimdallr. The dome sapphire on the San Martin also has a slight chamfer around the edge to give you that lovely mirroring when it comes to the chapter ring. Now although both watches use ceramic bezel inserts, again there's two visual differences, and the indices or the markers around each bezel insert for both watches are considerably different, the markers being quite a bit thicker on the San Martin, and also you've got the difference within the pip. The Heimdallr uses an applied pip, whereas the San Martin used a more refined subset pip, which is being built into that triangle. With regards to the bezel used, the Heimdallr uses a 2-tier stepped design similar to the San Martin, and you can see a slight taper to the bezel as it reaches to the top. Now the San Martin is also very similar, but you can see the squares around the bezel, the grip is a bit more defined, and the taper is not as much as the one on the Heimdallr. Both bezels are 120 click unidirectional bezels, and if we just see how they rotate now, so as I mentioned, this is just a touch stiffer. The sound is very defined, the clicks are very defined, it is very tight. There is, however, a slight bit of backplay, and also there is a slight issue with alignment, but that isn't actually the bezel. I think that is the chapter ring, where it's slightly misaligned with the 6 o'clock marker, but it is a bit of a pain to turn, and also and this is the same with the Seiko original. I think the grip is not enough. It does slip quite a bit unless you got really dry fingers. Then you can actually get a grip. Regarding the back play, how much back play is there? It does go towards a click, so just a touch bit of back play. Now how does that compare to the San Martin? Now, as you saw, the grip, the sides are actually more defined on the San Martin, so that does translate in the gripability of this bezel. But the rotation, you can clearly see, you can clearly hear, is so much more different to the Heimdallr. The clicks are barely audible. The rotation still again stiff. I don't think the grip's adequate, to be honest. And right back now, my hands are a touch sweaty as well, which isn't helping. But yeah, I don't know which one's better, to be honest. Let's get some grip on here. Sound wise, I'd say the San Martin sounds a touch more refined. In terms of alignment, they do have much better chapter ring alignment, which also makes sure everything else is aligned. And backplay, zero backplay. So the bezel on the San Martin is marginally better, but of course they both use that wire system. I think the issue might be within the Heimdallr. I think the wire that you use for the clicks is a bit too short, maybe a bit too stiff. It does need a bit of flexibility to allow it to rotate, you know, easily enough. Now let's move on to the case and the case finish. Now, dimensionally, I said they were exactly the same, but there are two significant differences. One, not so much. You just need to have a good eye, and I'm going to see if it does translate onto camera. But the second is quite visible. So on the Heimdallr, A-face circular brushing, and then you got that really nice transition into a high polished sides. Moving on to the case back, and you've got the logo of the shark and the specifications engraved onto the case back, or laser etched, whichever process they've used. Now you've got the similar brushing profile on the San Martin as well. So you've got circular brushing on the A-face down to the tips of the lugs, just to mention the polishing between the lugs, and then you've got a polished, the same polished transition going around the case and also to the back. Now, where are the differences? The eagle-eyed viewers probably have already spotted it, but let me show you something which you might not be able to spot. But I think we need to go down just a bit closer to the watches. Now with the Heimdallr, the brushing seems to be a lot finer on the A-face. The lines, you can't really see them. They're clearly a lot finer, but I want you to pay attention to how the crown is sitting. It's sitting in flush within the case, which is a good thing. Of course, it adds to the profile of the case, but just pay attention how exactly it sits. So the brushing, very fine. You can just about see the small lines. And now this is the San Martin. So already on camera you can see it is quite a bit coarser than the Heimdallr, and you can feel those lines if you were to run your nails across the case. But there we go, just look at that crown and how the case has been beveled around the crown, and that's also followed on the case back, which has been polished, and there's a finer detail involved on the case. So going back to the case, you know, yes, there's finer brushing on the Heimdallr case. However, maneuvering the crown, screwing it in and out is a bit more difficult because we don't have that beveled edge that is present on the San Martin. Now, interestingly enough, both the actual Seiko 6309 and SRP do have this beveled edge here on the case. You know, I like how both crowns do sit within the case. I prefer that rather than them sticking out. But it's just so much easier to operate because you've got this little feature present. Now, I don't know why Heimdallr didn't put that in there, because this is where I need to bring in the bronze Heimdallr. You can see it's actually present on this case. So that's a trick definitely missed by Heimdallr. Now, the last thing that is different, straps used. So Heimdallr use a thick rubber strap. It is okay, it is quite thick, and you've got this stainless steel buckle with the Heimdallr logo. Now San Martin use a much softer one, and I think the buckle is a lot nicer. It's a bit wider as well, so it just shows a touch better machining, and you've got this shark logo at the end. So how do we summarize between these? Okay, well, in order to summarize, we need to look at the prices. I mentioned the Heimdallr come out at £100 from AliExpress, and San Martin around 160. I think initially when it came out it was a touch more, but they are sitting at around 160 from the actual store from San Martin. So the key difference is, if you summarize, the San Martin has got better hands. So we're looking at value add. I'll say the hands are definitely better. There's a lot more work that's been done on them, and I expect them to be a bit more expensive than the ones used on the Heimdallr. Of course, the crystal is an upgrade. You got double dome with a slight chamfer, so again an upgrade on the San Martin. The bezel insert definitely better on the San Martin. The case crown, the finishing is better on the Heimdallr, but I really do like the functionality, which has been greatly improved off the crown on the San Martin case. The last thing being the strap. I mean, the straps I'd say negligible, because you can change straps. It's not something which I really focus on. I mean, I'd change both the straps anyway for a waffle strap, but I would love if both of them provided bracelets. The bracelets are not hard to get at all, considering these are homages to the Seiko Turtle, and I'd say they'd be pretty close to it. So I don't know why it's so hard just to get a bracelet in there. These would look amazing on a bracelet. So then let's sum it up. There's a £60 difference. Does £60 equate to the improvements? Maybe to some, those of us that do like the more refined watch. I think the problem here is Heimdallr come out so cheap, but because there's a £60 difference, I come back to this question: are the upgrades worth that £60? And San Martin, you know, have again proven to be a touch more refined, but albeit slightly more overpriced. So I'll leave that for you guys to think about. You know, would you pay that £60 difference for the differences that I pointed out? Thank you everybody for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section, and I'll see you on the next video.